Let's bring in Ryan Shorthouse, who's from the Conservative think tank Bright Blue. Good afternoon to you. Was it right for her to resign?
Yes. Her whole strategy, her economic strategy of going for growth principally through large tax cuts, obviously had a really detrimental impact on market confidence, to the point that her whole strategy was reversed, in the sense that we're now having to have spending cuts and some tax rises. So she was completely impotent, and she couldn't continue.
Yeah, but does she owe a bigger apology to people, considering she seems to have been playing roulette with the British economy? None of the plans, virtually all the plans that she put out there to win the leadership race, never came to fruition. We saw market turmoil. We saw some people paying £500 a month extra on their mortgages. Yesterday, she stood at the dispatch box and said she's a fighter, not a quitter. And 24 hours later, she quits.
Yeah, it isn't very conservative to do a very risky strategy, and she did pursue that. There were people in the Conservative Party who warned her that it would be risky, that having such large unfunded tax cuts at a time when interest rates and the cost of borrowing was increasing was incredibly risky. Obviously, that was proved right, and the markets reacted the way they did. Now, we have seen some stabilisation in the markets. We have seen the pound recover and gilt yields, the rate of gilt yields, which is basically the cost of government borrowing, come down. However, the real long-term impact will be the increase in the cost of mortgages. And people won't forgive the Tories for that. At the end of the day, homeowners are one of the biggest, most important parts of the electorate for the Tory party, even in those red wall seats in Northern England and Wales. And they've had, a long-term impact now on the costs of servicing their housing. So I think it's going to be very difficult for the Tories to recover from this.
Well, someone is going to have to take the reins to be Prime Minister. Well, the contest is going to be much shorter, less than about a week. Allies of the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt say he will not be standing for the Tory leadership. Of course, he only became Chancellor within the last week. Who do you think is a serious contender?
Well, I suspect that you'll probably see people like Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, who obviously came second and third in the leadership election that happened in the summer. I think at the moment, Tory MPs are desperate to prioritise financial stability and to calm the markets and improve market confidence and investor confidence in the UK. Considering that Sunak warned about Liz Truss's, or the Trussonomics strategy, how it would be very dangerous, I suspect, he has won that argument and been proved right. And indeed, he has experience during the pandemic of dealing with a very troubling economic situation. So, I think a lot of MPs will look to Rishi Sunak as somebody who perhaps has the right arguments and experience. But I think it's still very unclear who is going to put themselves forward, and ultimately who will win what seems to be the case, not only MPs being involved, but a kind of need or an attempt to try and get members involved as well through a kind of online system.
But there isn't a unity candidate, is there, for the Conservatives? And not only that, it'll be the Conservative politicians choosing another leader. Not even the Conservative Party membership, which is less than 1% of the entire population. Do you think there is a fair argument for the likes of Sir Keir Starmer to say, enough messing around, it's time for the people to decide and have a general election?
Well, technically, in a parliamentary democracy, there isn't a need to have a general election because obviously people voted for the Conservative Party and their local MP in 2019, and then it's up to those MPs to decide who the leader is. So technically, there doesn't have to be a general election. But of course, this is unprecedented now, and there's been a complete change in both political and economic strategy during a very short period of time. So, my view is that I think it's going to be very difficult now for the Tories to win the general election, even 2 years from now. And it feels very inevitable that the tectonic plates of politics have shifted towards a Labour government. And it just feels the best that the Tories can do now. They won't be able to do anything bold, considering both the economic and the political climate. As you say, the Tory party is very divided. So a new leader won't be able to do anything bold, in which case probably the best they can do is try and stabilise the markets and stabilise the economy. But I don't think that'll be enough to really change the political reputation, which has now been heavily damaged by what's happened.
And finally, Ryan, how would you sum up Liz Truss's legacy as PM in a word or two?
Well, I think, I suppose the legacy is you need to have fiscal discipline. And that's important, particularly for the Conservatives, but for any party. And you have to make sure that you balance the books.
Thank you very much for joining us live. Ryan Shorthouse is from the Conservative think tank Bright Blue.